Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We got the Chiron out front. Sometimes we're zooming, sometimes we're rooming, and sometimes I'm heading off to Houston, Texas for a football game. In the middle of the plague, I'll be up on the roof at the NRG Stadium. I still call it Reliant. Some call it the thing next to the Astrodome. This guy has been in Houston a long, long time, but he made Baltimore his home in the early part of my career, back in 91, 92, 93. I recently saw a picture of Michael Jordan on Home Run Derby Day at Camden Yards with his White Sox jersey on and his sunglasses on, and I thought I saw Butch Alsandor in the reflection of Michael Jordan's glasses, and I sent him a picture, and I said, were you on the field that day? Were you in front of Jordan? And you said to me, no, it wasn't you. Why didn't you just take credit, dude? Why didn't you just say, yeah, that was me. I was home run. It's me with Michael Jordan there with the sunglasses, because it was the coolest picture ever. I wish it were me. I wish it were you.
Yeah. I wish it was. I wish it was me too, but I don't think so. I've been to so many All-Star games, Nestor. I was trying to get it all in there together, and we had actually gone. I was in camp with the Houston Astros when Michael was with the White Sox in Sarasota, and we went down there for 2 days to take part in that zoo when he was at camp, in spring training with the White Sox, and that was incredible. So when I first got your message, I thought maybe that's where it was coming from, because we were all around when he was doing batting practice, and then it was a zoo when we were trying to interview him afterwards. So I got just a little taste of that.
Well, I was in the locker room when he walked into the National League locker room that day, and Bill Murray was there, and there were Patrick Ewing was taking cuts, and he had never held a baseball bat in his life. So I mean, that's like '93 was the All-Star game was a big deal, the baseball All-Star game, right? We're going back 27 years now for here in Baltimore. But for you, how long were you in Baltimore? I mean, I feel like I grew up with you, and my former partner, or my current partner, I should say, Don Moeller, always said I was going to grow up to be the Chris Thomas of Baltimore. That's what he told me in 1982. So you were the Chris, you replaced Chris, I believe, right, along the Vince Bagley trail of all of that. You had a nice little gig here in Baltimore with Camden Yards open, right?
I did, and enjoyed it very much. And I was actually in Baltimore. It was a very unique time, and it was a very special time because I got there for the last season in Memorial Stadium, which was very, very cool. So that means I was there for the end of one era and the beginning of another, because I was there for the start of Camden Yards.
And there were no Ravens, right? You didn't know I'd be calling you in 2020 talking about a Baltimore-Houston football game, right?
There were no Ravens at the time, but the interesting thing football-wise that went on, Baltimore was trying to be one of the NFL expansion teams during the time I was there. This was somewhere between 89 and 93. And the interesting thing about it was Richardson was the owner of the Panthers. He was trying to make a bid for Carolina, and Baltimore was making a bid at the same time. And I remember because he and Johnny Yu were former teammates, he got Johnny Yu to come down and be a part of his bid. And that was kind of a controversial thing back during that time.
Well, I found my press pass recently. I'm merging my brand. I've done sports for all 30 years 29 years on the radio. I'm doing this Baltimore Positive thing, and this is literally the week we're going to launch a whole new platform that I've been working on all summer during COVID, and I found all these old pictures. Probably one of the reasons I ran into that Jordan thing. I took a picture with Bill Murray the day of the All-Star game, in 1993. He did a bumper for me as John Winger from Stripes. So, I have all this weird stuff in where do you put it all? I found the credential from the Dolphins-Saints game at Memorial Stadium the night that they put John Mackey got his ring that night. And, I mean, that was the drunkest room I've ever been in outdoor out on 33rd Street that night. But we really believed we were going to get a team. Butch, by the way, Butch Alsandor joining us here. He was in Houston doing television forever, after his career in Baltimore. Now doing play-by-play in color for the Southwest Conference and Southland Conference on ESPN, ESPN2, 3, and Plus, and all that good stuff in AT&T Sportsnet. You can find him at Butch Alsandor out on Twitter as well. But, all these years later, we got a team Then Houston lost my Oilers because I was an Oiler fan. And then you went a couple years without a team, got a team back, now 2 Super Bowls. We've had 2 parades since you left, and Houston still is looking for a championship game, right? So it's fascinating how these things change. And, I mean, I don't know that I've been in a room with you much the last 25 years. Remember you well and see you out and about doing your thing. But, man, these 2 municipalities have been through a lot with football, right?
Oh, no, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. And I remember seeing you at a couple of the Oiler games. You came downtown. The Oilers was kind of one of your favorite teams at that time since the Baltimore had lost the coach.
I always wore Oiler hats and shirts and jerseys. I had a whole closet full of stuff I was going to break out this week, but it's up at the radio station and I'm here. I was going to break out the little I had an Oiler ski cap with the little ball on the top, you know what I mean? And that was my Earl Campbell. I got that in 1979 at the Sears, man. I mean, I was hardcore. And Butch, being a kid from East Baltimore in 1979, you couldn't find Oiler stuff. I had cousins that lived in Corpus Christi that would ship it up at Christmas time. True story.
Yeah, you know, and you were talking just a second ago, Nestor, how this has all come full circle. You know, we had a couple of years without football, and you know, basically the biggest thing going on here during that time was the Comets championship run. You know, they were pretty good in the WNBA, and then all of a sudden we get football back, and there's a big excitement in town. And you know, unfortunately for the Oilers, like it's almost like they're a team without a city now, because you know they don't really belong to Tennessee, and even though that's, you know, they still have all the rights and stuff, and yet Houston has moved on to the Texans. So I run into Dan Pastorini all the time, and some of those guys, and Kenny Burrow before he moved to Florida, and you know, I always felt kind of bad for those guys because they had a stellar career. You know, they went through a lot of bad times with the Oilers, and then Bum Phillips comes in, and they're a winning team, and then, you know, they move. And so their history is not really they're kind of caught in the middle.
Well, we had that here forever when you would see Bruce Laird or Stan White or, you know, and you probably work with Stan at BAL for a period of time as well. Those guys were orphaned to some degree here in Baltimore. And, you know, the Ravens have picked up the Lenny Moores and Artie before he passed and Johnny before he passed, all those guys, you know, a part of what's happening here. But let's bring us to 2020. I mean, we talk about life without football, life without sports. You're a sports guy. I'm a sports guy. The last 6 months of COVID, you know, I was skeptical all along about all of this. I still am to some degree. You know, I think anybody that's downplaying the virus hasn't read a science manual. I have a wife who's a 2-time leukemia survivor and a diabetic. We're trying to keep her safe, keep me safe. I didn't think I would want to get on a plane and come down for a football game for no one, but I don't say I'm looking forward to it, but I enjoyed the game on television last week, Butch, and it has been a nice little opiate in my life after the last 6 months of nothingness to at least, and we got a good football team here in Baltimore, you know, so we have a real chance. I don't know if they're going to finish this season, but I feel like I'm going to be on the roof down at Houston watching a pretty competitive football game on Sunday, and I was surprised that week 1, it wasn't a laundry fest, and it wasn't sloppy and awful. It was a representative view of the NFL this week, I felt.
And that's the best way to describe it, is a representative view, because you know, some of the teams weren't quite as sharp as you would think they would be. Others were. I mean, I was surprised too. You know, they hadn't really done any tackling or anything like that, and they spend so much time during a normal camp. But you mentioned it being a pretty good game. It's going to be a statement game for the Texans. You know, they didn't have like their best effort versus Kansas City on Thursday night, so that was a huge loss to them. And even the score at the end, They picked up some points during cleanup time, so it wasn't actually their best effort. This is a statement game for them. You know, the last time they went to Baltimore, things didn't turn out too well. So Deshaun Watson had his birthday, I think it was yesterday, so he's going to be looking to have something to celebrate.
Well, you talk about your relationship with Houston and my relationship in Baltimore and what players represent and legends represent, and what Dan Pastorini, who's a friend of mine as well, and still with me, you know, on behalf of my family, my wife was battling. We went swabbing in every ballpark, and he swabbed with me down at then it wasn't Enron anymore. It was the next one, Minute Maid, I believe is what it was, when I was down there with him, and you know, for those guys, and I guess that era and football and where we are, I guess at this point, Baltimore versus Houston, right? And Mahomes and, let's see, Lamar, Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, what the community represents. But Deshaun Watson getting that contract and watching the transcendent person he's become for your metropolis there. And J.J. Watt on the backside of that these players come in and they leave behind charity. Well, you know what? Ray Lewis has done a whole lot up here as well. John Ogden, these legends we bring in. But Deshaun Watson feels like he's a different kind of cat for that community down there.
Yeah, he's come in and he's really done well. And the thing about Deshaun Watson, he comes in, if I'm not mistaken, he's a 12th round draft pick. I mean, number 12 in the first round of the draft. They picked him up. He comes in, and right away, Bill O'Brien decides to start a guy by the name of Tom Savage. And the very first game of the year, I mean, Savage is sacked like 50 times in the first half, and so O'Brien decides, I got to turn him loose. So he turns him loose in the second half, and from that point on, Watson has been the guy. And he's been an incredible guy to watch on the field, and now he's getting his feet wet off the field, doing some of these charitable things. And when you're on the team with J.J. Watt, I mean, the example is there. You know, the pattern is there for you to follow that example and to make your mark in the community. But
well, nobody's done more than Watt in the aftermath of the hurricane, right? Like, I mean, that was transcendent for all athletes ever, right? That's a high mark for him.
Yeah, but Nestor, he came in, and I got to tell you about this. This kid came in. I remember when he came in as a rookie, and it was so funny because he comes out there. We're talking about J.J. Watt, and I mean, this kid's running 110% every practice. It could be a walk-through drill, and he's going fast. And I remember Antonio Smith. They had a defensive end named Antonio Smith, the ninja, Antonio Smith. And we're talking to Antonio Smith one day, and he says, you know what? You got to watch that kid. We're out there telling him, hey, man, you need to dial this back a little bit. You know, he's running around blocking passes. We're going through walk-through drills, and he's blocking passes. And he said, you know what? That's just how I play, and that's just who I am. And so he had that effort on the field, but he also came in with the part, I'm going to be a part of this community. I mean, I've never seen a professional athlete involved, and now a lot of it has to do with how things have changed. And now we have Twitter and Instagram and things like that where it really helps you out reaching out to some of these people. But J.J. Watt would just get on Twitter. He'd see somebody, you know, basically a girl who needs a date for a prom. Okay, fine. You need this, fine. I mean, he just jumped in full, and you could kind of tell he was just that kind of guy. A lot of people thought it was fake, that he was putting it on too much, that he was forcing it, but it's just the kind of guy he is, and he actually enjoyed doing that. And just to hear his teammates say, you know, a lot of times you will fold under that pressure. You're a rookie coming in, and the vets tell you, hey, man, you got to dial that back. You know, you're making us look bad. You know, a lot of people will dial it back, but that's just not his mentality. And he was able to tell them, hey, that's just who I am. That's how I play. And if you remember his first couple of years, I can't tell you how many passes he blocked, and he intercepted a couple of passes and ran back, and it's because that's the habit he puts forward. You know, practice makes perfect, and that's what he was doing on the field every single day.
He tortured Flacco's Super Bowl year. We got our ass kicked down there when at the low point in the year we won the Super Bowl, and, you know, he just took over the game. But, you know, when you talk about COVID, we're talking about the league and the significance of the league and, you know, someone like Lamar, and we're seeing, you know, maybe a generational player here in Baltimore, certainly in Kansas City where Mahomes already got a pelt, right? That Deshaun Watson flashed that. Then there's the aftermath of the injury. Then there's you go national TV first night, go up to Kansas City and play the sacrificial lamb. Now Lamar comes in. Boy, 0-2 will not smell good in Houston on Monday morning if I'm leaving from Hobby. And the one thing that you have going for you and we would have going for us next week would be home field advantage. That's kind of gone, right? I mean, this defense is going to have to chase Lamar around on Sunday, and they're not good at that.
Well, and here's the thing about it. And let me mention this before I forget. You know, too bad we couldn't get that Zoom hookup here because I have worn my Astros rainbow for you, Nesta. I was all ready for you to check it out.
The cheaters?
You're going to appreciate that. Yes.
The
Jeff,
cheaters.
I'm sending you a picture.
All right. Please send. I'll put the. We'll Zoom next week, Butch. I promise, man.
Okay.
I want to see the You get your rainbow J.R. Richard out, and I'll get my my Elvin Bethea jersey out. And we'll go nose to nose. What do you think?
Well, the one I have on today is Jose Cruz. So I mean, that's just as good.
You know
that's
what? He didn't cheat.
Going back.
That's 1980. He didn't cheat. I'm good with him, Ruthven. Any of the Dickie Thon, anybody back there. I'm good with any of them. It's my boy Altuve, and don't take my shirt off. Do you have anything you want to say on that? Because I haven't accused most of the Houston people of cheating this week in regard to the Astros, but I am finding that it's almost like being with Patriot fans. There's like a deniability that's not even plausible, that most Astros fans say, well, we didn't cheat. They're all cheating. That not – yeah, it's pretty damning and shameful because I thought from the outside, I'm an old school baseball guy, Butch. I would hope that we didn't cheat and win a World Series with Buck Showalter and have to come back and say, we cheated every day for 2 years. I mean, that's rough what they did.
Yeah, no, and here's the thing about it. They admitted it, and what I think is heartbreaking about it, you got to understand, I grew up an Astros fan. I mean, even way back to the days where you could only see one game every week or so. So I go way back with the Astros.
You go back to Enos Cabell is what you're telling me? Like Jimmy Wynn? All right.
I saw Enos a lot because I fill in on the pre- and post-game shows, and so I see Enos a lot.
Tell him I loved him in Bad News Bears breaking training. Let him know that, all right?
Yeah, he's still working with the Astros. But here's the thing. They did it. They did it. They had to own it. And the thing I hate about it is they didn't have to do it. That was a very, very talented team. I mean, they didn't need that kind of stuff. They really didn't. And I didn't like the way A.J. Hinch kind of got thrown under the bus for the whole thing. But the other side of it, too, is it's like Major League Baseball has thrown the Astros under the bus, too, because, there were some other things going on, the investigation with the Red Sox, the investigation with the Yankees, and then COVID comes around. And basically, they get to kind of, quietly whisper, well, the Yankees did this, but, we're done with it. We're moving on. It's all over. So the Astros I feel like the Astros had to take the burden for everybody.
Well, they won. They won.
They had to be the whipping boys for that. So they admitted it. And like I said, they should not have done it. They shouldn't have been involved with that kind of crap. And now they actually got a break. If you can call it a break with COVID going on, because it was going to be terrible going on the road. It was going to be a really
Butch,
bad
it's all I talked about in February when the Ravens lost and we're getting ready for baseball. I'm doing some baseball segments. It's everybody wants to kill the Astros, and then COVID happens, and it's like, oh, we're just hoping baseball comes back. And the Dodgers didn't feel that way week one, right?
Yeah. Well, it followed them. That's all we talked about for a while, and they had a couple of stumbles out of the gate. Trying to handle it. The first press conference at spring training probably didn't go as well as it could have, but they had to get out there and they had to face the music.
The owners denied it all too, right? The owner's been like head in the sand, Crane, right?
Well, he at the by that point when I'm talking about spring training, everybody was out there. Everybody was taking responsibility for it. There was no place to hide at that point. I mean, it was out there. We just had to face the music basically. And, and that's what they did. And then the COVID hits and you don't have to go because, some of the, not just the booing, but some of the stuff was already happening in spring training. So I can't imagine how bad it would have been during the regular season, if you had to go through a normal regular season. But this way, they can pay for it. I mean, I don't know if you saw some of the stuff in L.A. this week when they went in to play the Dodgers. Over the weekend, there were planes flying over with messages for the Astros. There were people meeting the buses and stuff like that. So, but that was just a very small sliver of what would have happened had it been a normal season. So they're going to have to try to redeem themselves, and it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a long time. It's your reputation.
Butch Alsandor has been in Houston for 27 years, a homecoming for him to go back and do television there for a long, long time. Now doing play-by-play in color for college sports, and you can find him out on Twitter at Butch Alsandor. And if you are a young old-timer like me, you'll remember his weeknights and weekend reports on WBAL back in the day. But back to the Texans and Lamar and the Ravens and what Lamar brings, because Lamar is his own show, right? We have Mahomes on Monday Night Football here next week. The notion would be 2-0 versus 2-0 and Lamar and Mahomes. We haven't beaten them yet, right? And obviously Deshaun had them down 24-0 up in Kansas City back in January when it counted. For Lamar and where he fits in all of this and the excitement level, there's a different kind of football being played right now from the Baltimore Ravens than the other 31 teams in the league.
It's definitely a different kind of football. I actually watched a little bit of their game this weekend. You know, with fantasy football, you're jumping around all over the place watching anybody you have a player playing in, and it was impressive. It was extremely impressive, and everything from the defense forced the 3 turnovers the Ravens did against the Browns. That was huge, and that's something the Texans cannot fall into, because if they turn the football over and they lose possessions, or should I say give Lamar Jackson extra possessions, I mean, you're just really putting your back against the wall. So that's going to be, I think, the key for Deshaun Watson in that offense. You know, they're going to have to take the football some type of way, manage to maintain possession, control the clock a little bit, and it's to some point, because when Lamar Jackson is on the bench, when he's on the sidelines, that's the best place. If you're a Texans fan or if you're the Houston Texans, you're better off when you have the football if you can control the football. Now, if they turn it over the way the Browns did, it could get ugly fast. I mean, it could turn into a pretty bad situation. But Lamar Jackson, I mean, I just watching that guy, he has a habit. I love the way he works with his tight ends, with all of them. He seems to have a sense where those guys are on the field, and somehow the Texans are going to have to do something to make those, because a lot of times it looks like that's his option. That's his first option a couple of times, and somehow they're going to have to take them out and make them go to some of these other guys, make some of these other guys beat them. But what I saw on Sunday, the Ravens looked absolutely incredible. I mean, Lamar ran. What did he run for? 45 yards, if I remember correctly?
Well, they didn't run particularly, aggressively as they have in the past. They were almost the offense that everybody dreamed them up to be a year and a half ago, where it was a day where Lamar threw for 300 and got off the field. Didn't need the pass and still threw for 300 yards. It was one of those kind of days where, and the Browns were kind of impotent, right? Offensively, they weren't going to score much if they were going to score at all. I have more respect for what Deshaun Watson does, but I think that Anthony Weaver has his hands full. My old pal here from Baltimore, Notre Damer. I know he's taking over the defense there, and there's high hopes that he'll be a head coach at some point, but I don't know that they have the horses to run with Lamar, and I don't know that most teams do. And whatever you're doing, you're sort of playing left-handed against Lamar, because whatever the game plan is this week, it's something your defense better adapt to quickly, because you're not going to play it much the rest of the year.
Well, he gives you so many things to worry about, and you're exactly right about that. I mean, you may put in some things this week that you won't use again for the rest of the season.
And they still might not work when you put them in, because you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, but you have to try to do something. He's one of those guys, most people, when you're doing the defensive scheme, you're worrying about everybody but the quarterback when you're talking about a run situation. Well, it's a running situation when he goes back to pass. He's always a threat to keep the football. And so that's something you have to, most teams have to have somebody there to spy him. And then, you can't have just anybody spy him, because it has to be an athlete, somebody who's capable of running and trying to keep him, somewhat under control. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of scheme the Texans can come up with on the defensive end. And like I said, maybe the best case scenario is to have more success offensively. They brought in David Johnson, and that was another situation, because Bill O'Brien traded DeAndre Hopkins to Arizona, as you well know, for David Johnson. And in all honesty, David Johnson had a pretty good game against Kansas City. I think he ran for 77 yards and a touchdown. Didn't have many opportunities in the second half because of the game, because of the score of the game. But he looked pretty good. But here's the thing. DeAndre Hopkins caught 14 passes for 151 yards for Arizona. Those 14 passes were more than the 3 Texans receivers combined. The 3 starters combined did not have 14 catches. So you talk about talk radio here in town. People were back to blasting Bill O'Brien a little bit about that trade. And, that was one of those things. Will Fuller, 8 catches. Cobb had 2, and the other guy, Brandon Cooks, who had an injury, but he played and had 2 catches. And it still didn't equal up to what the force that Hopkins was for Arizona in that big win over the 49ers.
Butch Alsandor is here. He is in Houston, where I will be up on the roof at 4:25 Eastern Time on Sunday as the Texans take on the Ravens. Luke is in Owings Mills all week. Luke will be back in the press box for the Kansas City game next week. We are just hoping for some sense of normalcy in this country, and I guess football brought that, at least for a couple hours over the weekend. Butch, it's great to catch up with you, man. I would Zoom with you anytime, especially if you're wearing that Jose Cruz jersey, so we should do that at some point. Maybe there'll be some playoff talk here in a couple of weeks. Who knows, right?
Oh, that'd be great. Hey, let me give a quick shout-out to my boys, Joe Hammond and Russ DeLynn in Baltimore. They keep up with you, Nestor. They're always kind of, checking it out whenever they can. So, hello, guys. And the Dean, Vince Bagley. When I was in Baltimore, I got a chance to work with Vince Bagley, and that was an extreme pleasure in itself.
Well, there's no doubt about that. And Russ DeLynn and I keep company every once in a while. He's always in a stadium near you. I think he was in Jacksonville last week, for crying out loud. So we'll get him around safely. He might be in Houston this week before it's all over with. But I appreciate you making some time. Stay safe down there in Houston. I wish I were having barbecue and ribs in the parking lot with y'all down there and drinking Lone Star beer and doing all that. I'll save that for another trip. How about that?
All right, Nestor, be careful, man. Thanks again.
Butch Alsandor, once here in Baltimore, been down in Houston for almost 3 decades now. You can find him at Butch Alsandor out on Twitter, and also college football all over the Southwest as well. You can find me out on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and Snapchat and anywhere that social media takes you. We are merging WNST.net with Baltimore Positive. Sometime this weekend, we're going to flip the switch. And my new baby's going to come to life. I hope you check it out with a whole bunch of WNST classic and music and arts and politics and news and the great conversations that we've been amassing here over the recent years, all in one place at Baltimore Positive. I am Nestor. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. We are WNST.net AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports, Baltimore Ravens, and Baltimore Positive.